Welcome to Gaia's Love, a podcast of brief messages to help humanity bridge the gap to the new earth. My name is Vivienne Gerard. It is my delight to be a scribe for consciousness today, sharing the wisdom that flows through from Source. Here we go. Episode 146. It is Thursday today here in Cincinnati. Chilly, kind of gray. Just sort of your average Thursday. And I arrived with this phrase that was really clear for me in my meditation. Be brave. Be brave. It seems like the theme this week, which is fun when themes start to appear and we can trace them so easily. The theme really seems to be about aligning with our destiny, who we're here to be at the highest level in this lifetime, and how we may not remember what that looks like until it suddenly just arrives, or we may get glimpses or tiny visions of it, and then our goal is to just keep aligning with that vision and allowing that future to be created, to be formed. So when I was feeling, the message for today, I just heard these words from my grandmother, my beloved Momsy, who I've talked about before, that just be brave. Be brave. Do the thing that terrifies and thrills you at the same time, but that you know is why you're here, or at least one of those steps towards why you are here. The reason that came forward for me so clearly, last night I watched A Star is Born with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, who are phenomenal in the movie, and I've had mixed reviews from people I trust about this movie. Like, it's heavy, don't watch it, it's terrible, or you're not going to feel good at the end of it, or, it's amazing, it's the best movie ever, the soundtrack is awesome. I mean, all these really variety of reviews. And I just kept getting the message that I wanted to see it for myself. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful and so powerful and so tender and so deep, and just a masterpiece of cinema in a way that allows you as a person in the audience to really feel what is being shared in the story. I think Bradley Cooper is just incredible, and this is his first movie, I think, that he was directing. But it goes with the theme of the other reviews. Apparently this is movie and theater review week also. But when I talked about Hamilton and the Green Book, these are really profound messages for humanity at a time when we're looking for those messages. So it's no coincidence that 3 of them have shown up in the same week for me. I've been in alignment, ready for that message to be received. And, the message is history's got its eyes on you. History's watching what you're doing. So what is it you're doing? Why are you here? What is the point of your existence? And what are you going to do about it? In the Green Book, and I don't want to spoil the movie, so I'm going to try and just sort of talk around it so that you have the same beautiful experience that I did watching it, where you don't know all the storyline. But they evolve as partners, the driver and the artist in that movie. They evolve together, they learn from each other, and they both have moments of being very, very brave and doing the thing that someone else would judge or evaluate or kick them out of the tribe for. I talk about this in my first book. When we're afraid of being kicked out of the tribe, we will do everything that we need to conform and to stay in the mainstream, to be invisible within the collective so that we're not kicked out. And yet, Hamilton over and over was willing to be kicked out of the tribe, over and over, stood up so clearly for what he believed, even when he blew apart his marriage and just so much pain. He created so much pain in the story that he shared, and yet he stood up for what he believed in, and for that, we owe him such a huge debt of gratitude. In the Green Book, they went into their scary places of what they believed about those they didn't know in other communities, other ways of living, North versus South. They literally drove the car into the Deep South at a time where segregation was very dangerous, and became partners. The driver and the artist became partners and learned from each other, and they were very, very brave. And when I was watching A Star is Born last night, the storyline is that this famous, very well-known artist, musician, performer who has addiction issues takes under his wing this protege, this woman, a young woman with an incredible voice, and puts her on a path for her own journey, her own growth, her own career. So right at the beginning, it's just within maybe a half hour of the movie, he invites her, after he meets her at a bar, he invites her to come to a performance that he's having, and he gets her backstage, but then he calls her out onto stage. He invites her out onto stage as he's singing the song that she shared with him that she had written. And he says, "This is your moment. Trust me and come on the stage if you're ready for this." And they show her, I just love this part of the movie so much. They show her just with her hands, her face in her hands, not wanting to look at the moment that's in front of her, not wanting to change who she is and step out onto that stage. She didn't go there in her knowing, conscious mind to become famous. She went there because she wanted to see this guy, and she didn't want to be at her dead-end job. And she wanted the adventure. I don't believe she went there because she knew she was going to be called on stage to sing her song. And yet, she was prepared. Her soul brought her to that moment in the story. And then it was up to her to be really, really brave. To be so brave that she would walk out on stage in front of a stadium full of people and sing her song with him. And it changed the course of her life in the story. She was ready for that. She had been preparing. Yesterday's podcast, Are You Ready Yet? She was ready for that moment. And then still, it called from her this ability to be brave and step into what she had called forward. We have so many movies and stories that are teaching that same lesson. I'm sure as I just named that, you can think of 5 or 10 examples of your favorite movie, your favorite book, your favorite song, where they talk about that moment of leaping into the future that you know you want, taking that giant step into the unknown, knowing you may, she probably believed as she stepped onto that stage, I'm either going to bomb or I'm going to do great. Or maybe she was so out of her body she didn't know. Or maybe she couldn't even think. All she could do is allow the energy to move through her throat. We don't know what the experience of the character was in that moment. But she still trusted that calling into whatever was coming next for her. I also believe there's not just one moment in our life where we are offered the opportunity to be really brave. I believe we're offered it over and over again, and our soul is always going to align us with the next possibility of how to be even more brave. And so we can resist as many times as we want. She could have stayed backstage and not walked out, and he would have sung her song, and she probably would have had somebody ask her about the song, and maybe she would have become a songwriter, and there'd be another whole story that would have been written. And at some point, she would have had another opportunity to be really brave and go on stage and sing her song. And whatever work needed to happen within her from that first opportunity to the second opportunity, her mind, body, spirit would have been figuring out what needed to happen so that she'd be ready for the next one. And then it was her choice for the next one to step into that. I feel like we all have those multiple moments to step into multiple futures. And none of them are right or wrong. It's always our choice of when do we want to be really brave? How long do we want to stay in the dead-end job or the places where we feel really small or invisible or unseen or unloved or unappreciated? Underappreciated is a great song by Christina Aguilera. How long do we want to stay in those places? And there's no judgment about it. It's always our choice and our journey, and we're the ones who shift it when we decide to shift it. One of the other pieces that I loved about A Star is Born is the dynamic between the one who is already famous and the one who is being put onto the path of becoming famous, and just watching how each of them navigate fame, how each of them handle the pressures that are put in front of them. I think I talked about this yesterday. If we are offered the opportunity to be brave and our mind, body, spirit is not in the highest alignment yet for being a pure vehicle or a pure messenger, we may step onto a stage before we're ready for it. And that's not quite the right words. We may step onto a stage that will teach us different lessons. And so we'll kind of sit in some suffering for a while, perhaps, or we'll learn some harder lessons, and then maybe we move to the easier ones. It's just a different pathway that our soul is taking us on. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just different lessons being learned. So seeing the comparison in that movie of how these two people offered very similar opportunities step onto their stages in different ways. And just how hard and complex the human journey can be. And if we're not fully prepared in those moments of stepping onto those stages, we can really struggle. So perhaps along with the message of being brave, I guess I would also add, trust the timing. Trust the divine timing. Instead of beating ourselves up and this has been the message all week too, instead of beating ourselves up that we didn't have that success sooner or we didn't have that thing we most wanted earlier, trust that the longer you wait for it, whatever it is for you, the longer you wait for that moment of stepping onto whatever your stage is that you most crave, you're clearing and releasing whatever's in the way of you having the most rich, abundant, beautiful experience of being on that stage. The longer you go without that thing that you want, perhaps the more prepared you are to just delight in it when you get it. To have the contrast between not having it for so long and then the sweetness when you have it. I waited until I was in my late 20s to have my children, and oh my God, by the time my children arrived, I could not have loved them more. I was so ready to be their mother and so ready to love them with all that I had. And I know, as a young woman, I wouldn't have been prepared to love the way that I loved my babies in my 20s, my late 20s. So I feel that when I say, be brave, and trust the perfection of the timing and know that your soul has it figured out. And the more you stay in alignment and listen to your soul, that divine timing is going to guide you into the greatest experiences possible with the least amount of suffering necessary. Yeah. So if you haven't watched A Star is Born, consider if it's a match for you. It was definitely a match for me, and it was so beautiful. So huge shout out to everyone involved in that movie, and especially to Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Well done. Well done. All right, be brave, my friends. Be very, very brave. Thank you for tuning in to today's vibration. Let's take this message of pure love out into all of our communities and continue expanding love here on Gaia. So much love from my heart to yours.